Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. So this episode is actually a follow-up to something that Ethan and I got to do. We got to go to Star Wars Celebration. And we met for the first time in the flesh realm of the world in the sunny state of California. So my name is Dan. My pronouns are he, him.
And I'm Ethan. My pronouns are also he, him.
Ethan, how are you?
I'm good. I have finally recovered from my extensive jet lag.
I have not recovered. I'm still in the chiropractor once a week, who told me that I did an absolute number to my back again. Mm-hmm. But it was worth it. We got to do a bunch of cool Star Wars stuff. I got to be in the room to see John Williams conduct for the second time in my life.
Bastard.
So before we tell everyone all the interviews we have lined up for this episode, let's just give a rundown of some of our favorite parts of the weekend. What were your highlights?
Well, even though I wasn't in the room, I did get to watch from another room John Williams play live. I got to see Harrison Ford come out on stage. That was a pretty wild moment.
Getting to see him in person was very weird, because it's just like, hey, that's Han Solo.
It's Han Solo's Indiana Jones.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah,
just like in the room.
There was a moment I cried my eyes out at.
Oh, the Andor?
No, later on, the Saturday of the con.
Oh, the Ahsoka trailer or teaser?
Yeah.
That is not online at all, is it?
Nope, we only saw it. I think some other people have seen it because of other reasons, but we're the only people who've seen it.
Us too, though. Just us.
Yeah, just us. We are the only two people who saw it.
I'm very excited for it, because it may be the first time we get to see decorated war hero Mathron Yorodo in live action.
Oh, God.
He's a great man who was wronged by the Jedi, and he needs to be reunited with his boyfriend. So as long as I get to see that.
Listeners, this is all I had the entire weekend.
we were at Batuu at Disneyland, and anyone who would speak to me, I would ask them if they knew the story of Mathron Yorodo, who had actually traveled to Batuu with Anakin Skywalker, who vanished after the Clone Wars. No one knows where he went. He just kind of blipped.
He blipped like in Avengers.
Yep. The bartender did know, though. The guy at the cantina was... And Ethan made me stop after 2 drinks, even though the bartender was going to let us have more, even though that was against the rules. So thank you to Dennis, I think his name was.
Yeah, Dennis.
Dennis.
Poor guy.
I realized how British you are.
Yeah.
Because I would talk to literally anyone who would even want to have a conversation, love talking to strangers. And Ethan was just like completely silent. I made friends with everybody. You know what? Just who I am.
We don't walk up to people and just say, "Hi, how are you doing?" It's not our thing.
I know. I guess it's an us thing. I really don't. Maybe it's a me thing. I really don't know. But Disney invited. I was media. Ethan, unfortunately, was not. They invited me to Batuu for an after-hours Star Wars event, which I got to see the Cantina Band play live on the Disneyland Lake, which was absolutely fucking bonkers, because I was walking out and I heard the do-do-do-do-do-do, and I was like, what the fuck? Is that like on the speakers? And I turned left and I just saw them. I was just in a place where they were just playing. I was like, okay, that's wild.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that. I was in the hotel room trying to desperately order a McDonald's on Uber Eats.
But we did get to go to Batuu early in the day. What did you think of the Batuu?
Now, that was an insane experience. You've been to the one in Florida before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'd never been, and oh, my God, it's just insane. Like, you walk through and then you're just in Star Wars. You got John Williams playing in every way, and you walk down a street and then you see the Millennium Falcon. Just there. It just landed in front of you.
It's just there.
You'd not done Rise of Resistance before, had you?
Correct. That was my first ride of the Resistance, which was... It wasn't even just a ride. It was like an experience.
Yeah. It was so good.
Still not as good as Spider-Man from Universal Studios, but it is the second best ride I've ever been on. Nothing will top the Spider-Man ride for me. Nothing can top Spider-Man.
It's a very good ride. Well, Mary Jane.
But I had later that night when I was at the event, it was the only thing I actually, because it was so packed at the nighttime thing. And I was starting at Disney World at 9 a.m. when my back was already killing me was the worst idea I've ever had. I went on and I was like sitting outside afterwards and I was just like staring at the X-Wing and I was just like having a moment like, oh wow, all the hard work that all of us put into this stuff like got us here. Like we could do this stuff. So it was like
pretty wild.
The relentless amount of time I've put into all this shit and everyone that does so much cool shit. We had the possibility to do stuff like this more often, hopefully when COVID ends, but shout out to Disney for shout out to Mickey Mouse who personally invited me. He texted me. He said, "Big D, this is M. What you doing?" I said, "What up, Mick? Not doing much." He said, "Come out to Cali." We chilled. Turns out you can't smoke cigarettes in the park, so we both got kicked out. But it's fine. He got us back in. He knew somebody. But other than that, like the con itself was incredible. Like seeing so many people like enjoying Star Wars, rather than having to be online watching people just rip each other to shreds and just be outright awful. I think the highlight for me was so I got walked over to the convention by Disney, and I'm just like starstruck, and I'm like talking to the woman who was guiding us, who worked for marketing or something. I was just like, this is like, I can't believe this is happening. Like the coolest thing that ever happened to me before that is I got to see Attack of the Clones a couple nights early because a friend of my father's got us in. But then I was sitting in a theater as a full men's choir came out to sing the Duel of Fates as smoke filled the room and red lights came up. And I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And then Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen walked out and he did the hello there. And I was like, oh, this is one of those memories. This is a core memory, I think. So it was, I get sentimental with that kind of stuff, like getting to see it it was just wild. But overall, it was well worth the experience, and hopefully we get to go again next year in London.
Yeah, you've all got to come visit me next year.
No, only me. Even if our friends go, we cannot talk to them because we're big press guys now. We got to have dinner with a friend of mine, Dan, which was, oh my God, dude, I'm still thinking about that bread.
Vakaya toast. Vakaya toast. Oh my God.
God. I was talking to him earlier. I was like, God, I can't stop thinking about it. We got to
find out your cousin lives next to icon Kurtwood Smith.
Dude, it wasn't even just. She was like, "Yeah, the guy from that '70s show." I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, the dad." And I was like, "The bad guy from RoboCop?" And my eyes almost rolled out of my head when I found out she had never seen RoboCop. I did text her earlier, and she goes, "I have a few days off in the next couple of weeks. I will watch it." I was like, medical school isn't important. Like, just quit and just watch RoboCop instead.
Yeah, definitely.
They can teach you some stuff about hospitals, I think.
What happens if a guy with his dick shot off comes in?
They did have to program him to shoot that guy in the dick. That's something I want everyone to think about and just have it. But other than that, like it was a great experience. I got to do an interview in rocking chairs in the beautiful California breeze, which was wild.
Mm-hmm.
So on to that. Oh, also, everyone, all listeners, it's pretty easy to find Ethan on social media. Feel free to bully him because he's never played any of the Kyle Katarn games. Kyle-Katarn, one of the greatest Jedi's ever lived. Jedi Academy. It's just astounding you haven't played any of them.
Dan, I am younger than you. I'm not old.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it is old. Well, have you played Shadow of the Empire?
No. I've seen it. I've seen a YouTube video of it.
Jesus Christ. I was young when that one came out. I played that in my my uncle's N64. But that one, so they teased, who was it they teased? They literally teased Dash Rendar. They're doing a Star Killer toy. Who are the other figures? Literally everyone we talked about was brought up at some point.
Yeah, it was very funny. But yeah, like there was like a marketing tease of certain characters who might have something done about them, and Dash Rendar was one of them. And that was wild.
Dash Rendar is cool, but what that means is that they could make Prince Xizor canon. That's what's more important to me. Remember, like, the board game? So we did an interview with a board game, which will be coming out on YouTube because it's very visual. That the cover is a Faline, like, you can tell that it should be Prince Xizor, but he's like, no, it isn't. It's like, fuck. So, but all of that aside, got to talk to
one other thing. We did get to see the Mandalorian trailer as well, which wasn't released to the public.
Oh, that wasn't released either?
No, so we got to see the delight of getting Babu Frick.
God, hey! I'm so glad they brought him in.
Yeah,
he's actually C-3PO's oldest friend.
Oh, that's another thing. I was on the same flight as Anthony Daniels.
Yeah, you didn't talk to him though, because you're a coward.
No, because we're British and we just don't.
I know. You just don't do social.
No.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like, there's a ton of stuff. Oh, In-N-Out Burger, mid. I'll say that. Yeah. Really shit on everyone from the West Coast. It was mid. It wasn't anything special.
It's just a cheaper Five Guys. That's all it is.
Okay, Five Guys is a lot greasier, but it wasn't anything. Nothing to write home about, if we're being honest. But once again,
I think Californians have just been indoctrinated.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of the things. But before we say all the interviews, I did want to give special shout outs to everyone who set up interviews with us, from Del Rey, from Disney to Penguin Random House, everyone who helped us out, Marvel, things like that. Thank you. This was one of the coolest experiences ever. Mm-hmm. So these are the interviews we have coming up in order. We're going to start off with I guess the architects of the High Republic. Is that what they call themselves?
That's who they are, yes.
Yeah, they're the people who run the show. So we've got Charles Soule, Justina Ireland, Cavan Scott, Daniel José Older, and Claudia Gray. After that, we've got Mike Chen, returning guest, who wrote Star Wars Brotherhood. First-timer Adam Christopher, with his book, Shadow of the Sith, which releases
the 28th.
The 28th, and we have a really good review on the site now, so check that out. Then, returning guest Christopher Cantwell talks to us about Obi-Wan as we sit in rocking chairs. We have a very special guest, R2-D2, who answers our infamous question. And then the last interview was one that happened almost, not by accident, but Ethan made it known to me that he was going to be at the convention, because I've talked about this before, but like reading books is hard for me because of some memory issues in my brain. So I haven't been able to like read a lot of Star Wars books because it's hard for me to contain the information. But what I do have the ability to do is listen. So I've listened to a lot of the audiobooks, and I keep doing them because that is actually really good for me to be able to like listen to this stuff and enjoy it without feeling like shit when I read like 2 pages and can't remember shit. So, one of the most well-known Star Wars audiobook narrators, I think he's done most of them, probably since Legends stuff.
Yeah, he's done a lot.
And he did a lot of Legends stuff too, I was reading. Mm-hmm. Marc Thompson, who also voiced Thrawn, and it felt like interviewing Tom Brady for a sports fan, because he hearing the voice that I have listened to for so long in person was wild. He was also dressed up, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was a really cool costume.
And he does say Grand Admiral Thrawn's perhaps line in the voice. So that made me very happy. So check all these interviews out. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan. I'm just going to let them play out for you. And we'll see you again soon. And more Star Wars to come. Ethan?
Catch you later.
God bless.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you. So, with Gatecrashers, we are very, very serious journalists.
Okay.
And you're the only one who's gotten to answer this before.
Right.
I hope you're all ready for this. What's your favorite sandwich? Daniel?
It's something with avocado. Turkey and avocado.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say the one that popped in my head was a Philly cheesesteak, and I don't have those that often. But like, if you get a really, really good one from Philadelphia, it's an amazing thing.
It's a good answer. That's where I'm from.
I am going to really, really betray my rural Mississippian roots here. It's a peanut butter banana sandwich.
Nice.
Mine's a taco, because a taco's a goddamn sandwich.
Controversial.
I can't remember what I said last time, but a cheese and pickle sandwich is
That was
always,
it?
Yeah, it's always got to be.
Not a
But
staple.
recently, cheese and beetroot. That's been my
That's
type.
Weird
yeah.
British
That's
garbage.
Wait, is that just a beet? Do you guys call it beetroot?
Beetroot, yeah, but pickled.
So just pickled beets?
Yeah.
Because all beets are roots.
Aren't all beets roots? Are there beets that are not roots?
No.
I don't know, you're just saying words now. I didn't realize what Pandora's box.
Actually, while we're talking about this, one of the other British gentlemen said he was, I didn't mean to be dropping eaves. I was like, is that how they say it over there?
Dropping
Dropping-
eats?
Dropping eaves. Eavesdropping, but
Eavesdropping.
flipped.
Oh.
He did say that.
No, I've never
I
heard.
think that was just the
I think he
whimsical
was just
turn of
being
phrase.
Okay, but that's hilarious. I'm going to
Didn't mean to be dropping eaves. Whatever. You know?
Indian?
That was uncanny.
Yes, that's what it sounded like.
Dick Van Dyke is in the building, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm offended on
God
behalf
bless you, Mary.
Anyway, that's what he said.
I'm dropping Eves, man. Sorry, anyway, Star Wars.
You're all canceled.
Totally okay.
So sorry.
Okay, so you probably got this before, but how does Phase 2 differ thematically from Phase 1? What is like the big driving feelings for you?
That's an interesting one.
That is interesting.
We've never.
Well, I don't know. I
Of
mean-
course, we've thought about that, but like, I don't think we've been
I don't
asked
know.
about it before.
I'm talking about images instead of words, which is really not great for a writer. But, one of the big things that we have from Phase 1 is that 70s disaster movie style
Yeah.
poster.
Right.
And that was a huge inspiration for all of us, that sort of genre. Most particularly the Poseidon Adventure, which, this kind of
Tracks.
thing that they had so much in that era. But when I think about the visual equivalent for Phase 2, I think about those WPA posters.
Sure.
That art from sort of the 30s and 40s when they're rebuilding, and there's this sense of community effort and coming out of something into, hopefully, just a more hopeful period. Like, to me, that the difference between those images sums up so that the difference in the feel, for me anyway.
For me, with the Adventures comics, it's like almost polar opposite energy-wise. Like we follow, all these Padawans, and things are messy, and they go into battle, and the Nile is something that no one expected. But for the most part, it's these Padawans working together and part of the Order and doing their best. And immediately with Phase 2, we're dealing with pirates across the board, and it's very chaotic, and it's very fun and weird, and just messy in a way that I just wasn't able to do with a group of Padawans. So there's just a lot more elements and a lot more energies involved. It's a lot of fun.
If I were to characterize it, I mean, Phase 1 is about an established, very strong system and how it responds to a stressor that it isn't really, it hasn't encountered before, like a new thing. Whereas Phase 2 is a system that hasn't really completely gelled yet. There's a lot of building to do. There's a lot of things that are like need to come together before the Phase 2 High Republic becomes the Phase 1 High Republic.
Right.
And so it's about the way that building journey can be very difficult. And so that's how I would characterize the two phases.
Anyone else?
I was just thinking about the difference between the Marvel Phase 1 and the Marvel Phase 2. And I suppose the difference is Phase 1 was centered around a young Jedi who was going out and finding her life. Phase 2 with Vilda is about a Jedi who is perhaps a bit tired of life and is in a world where the world's changing around him and he doesn't really know how to cope with it. So it's definitely flipping what people are expected from the Marvel series on its head.
Yeah, but going back to Claudia's answer, I think if Phase 1 was a 70s disaster movie, Phase 2 is a 70s spaghetti western, right? Where you have like these very disparate stories that you know at some point are going to come together. But some of the joy is having those things come together.
Wow. I'm so excited for this one. So,
We hadn't gotten that question before. We haven't talked a lot about Phase 2 at all.
Yeah.
Really. So.
I got a couple more for you. Now, the cool thing about the High Republic is it's delved into different young adult kids. Like, it's got all those types of things. When telling stories for young adults, do you tailor the themes to that, or do you think you try to put in quote-unquote adult themes so young readers can learn to deal with those types of things?
The minute you start beginning a story for teenagers, I'm going to teach you a lesson, young teens, that like it's done, you're over. You can teach stuff, but the minute that's in the forefront of everything, I also think there is sort of a misconception that that young adult themes are somehow dumbed down in some way, which is not at all the truth. And finally, like, Star Wars is fundamentally young adult in a lot of ways. I mean,
Who wants to leave home, right?
He's a
of the
teenager.
9 movies, a really high percentage of them are about young people leaving home, taking on different responsibilities for the first time in their life, having these coming-of-age experiences.
Like Palpatine.
And they're aspirational, aren't they?
They are.
For kids. When I first watched Star Wars, so I was like, around sort of 10 and up. But Luke and Leia and Han was obviously older, but they were what you wanted to be. They were, in the same way as any YA middle grade novel, you're giving people a glimpse of who they want to be, and giving them that wish fulfillment in a way as well.
And at the same time, I think showing their struggles, right?
Yeah.
And that's to me, the heart of a YA is really, a young person stepping into adulthood on some level. And to Claudia's point, we see that throughout Star Wars, and that's what makes it. That's the beating heart of it all.
Yeah, YA is not like a special thing within Star Wars that you have to do something different for. YA is right at the heart.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when writers don't discount the genre of young adult. So, one more for everyone. Now, heading into Phase 2, what do you think has been the most valuable lesson you've learned from Phase 1? Like anything, failures or things like that?
Keep notes.
Outline in much, much, much more detail than you think you can ever do, and then outline in more detail than that.
Mine's just trust the readers. I think sometimes we forget that you have to leave space for the reader to put things together and to bring their own interpretation and their own experiences to the page. And so I think it's really nice to trust the readers and say, okay, I'm going to do this thing. It feels like a big swing, but they're going to get it and they'll come along with it.
And to keep reminding yourself of that. I mean, we've had it today, so we've put that artwork up, and I've just gone on Twitter and seen people talking about Vildor and Matti. I mean, they don't know those characters, except for that one cover that Ario's put together. Right. But they're already invested in it. There's already memes, and this is exactly what we had with the first phase, and I've sort of forgotten it, because the worry is, we're taking a risk here, we're moving to a different point in the timeline, we are leaving some characters on a nice edge, that people love. Are people going to accept these new characters? Well, yes, they already are, and that's in the space of an hour. So to trust that we've done it before, and we can, and it's not just us. The Star Wars engine, maintains it, and the love people have for this.
I would say that we should make many more characters, and we should make sure not to kill any of them. Like twice the characters at minimum.
Spoiler.
It's like, you've been alive for 600 years. Like, I'm not dying.
Yep.
Hold it on.
Lots and lots and lots. Lots of characters.
And pets.
And pets.
Yeah, pets.
More pets.
Agreed.
2 more. Claudia, how did you handle writing a novel with such a traumatic ending with Fallen Star when I think I heard earlier you said most of these things are built on hope?
Well, I mean, that's when hope is of the most use to you. That's when you need it. You're not, going through a really great day where you're like, I'm filled with hope. You're like, no, I got it now. This is fine. But it is when things are dark and things are terrible. And of course, events like that they also bind people together sometimes. It can be horrible and divisive and terrible, or it can be something that helps create a unity. And hopefully that is what we see in The Fallen Star, is that's the resolve that everybody is taking away from this. Mark Ambrose thinks that he's done this terrible, just created this wound that the Jedi can never heal from. And it is a horrible, horrible thing that he has done, and a painful thing. But, he has not taken this away from the Jedi. And
That's great.
That was a great answer.
all right.
Yeah.
Daniel,
Yeah.
I actually got to interview you for CBR right before your first book came out, and since then I've watched you on social media because you use a lot of different platforms, especially TikTok and things like that, which I think is admirable because you're reaching a much different audience than something like Twitter would.
Right.
What have your experiences been with fans of the different platforms? Do you think you have a different audience?
Yeah, to your point, TikTok has an incredible Star Wars community, and that's really what I've loved about it. Even more than the responses to my own stuff, which is very mid. Twitter thinks it's amazing, but that's Twitter. TikTok is okay, cool. You put on a hat. I don't know. But the TikTok Star Wars community is incredible. The memes, but also the deep conversations, the philosophy. Because of the format, they can they have more room than 140 or 280 characters or whatever, and accordingly, the conversations go to different places, and that's been really, really cool to see. I also deeply love the Twitter Star Wars community because that's really cool in its own way too. But they are very, very different, and I've just really enjoyed as a fan, honestly, being able to just witness the conversations happening around the High Republic, but also just around Star Wars in general. So I go there to learn more than anything, which is great.
Interesting. Well, thank you all for your time. Hi, I'm here with Mike Chen. Now, you already got our signature question of the sandwich. So I was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So, being that we're at Star Wars Celebration, I wanted to ask you, what color would your lightsaber be, and what's your favorite force power?
Oh, absolutely a blue lightsaber. When I was a kid and I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater, I was like, oh, Luke has a green lightsaber now. That's cool, but blue is always better. So, blue lightsaber. Favorite force power? I think we all do force push in our minds, or at automatic doors or something like that. I would do. You could probably get more stuff if you could do a mind trick, but I find that force push is what, whatever emotion you're feeling, a good force push works in the moment.
Huh. Both you and Adam both had movement-based. It's interesting to hear the authors talk about it. Now, how did you approach the Anakin-Obi-Wan relationship in Brotherhood, especially with bridging the gap between Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars / Revenge of the Sith?
So the most important thing is that this book had to be a bridge. So what you see is, at the end of Attack of the Clones, there's still there's still animosity there, and not too much time has actually passed when you get to the Clone Wars movie, where they're pretty buddy-buddy. So it was extrapolating, how would you actually build that bridge there? And the thing that I tried to really think about is they have all the pieces there. Their roles have changed, but as people, they have not. So then it was getting to the understanding of, once you can put them in, without the framework of master and apprentice, then they see each other as people. And that's where that was the emotional foundation for this book.
That's interesting. Now, did you always plan on bringing elements in from the Tarkovsky Clone Wars series?
I wanted to from day one because I love that. I didn't know if I would be able to get away with it. But I know, it's kind of hinted in the proper Clone Wars series. There's hints of different things in there. So I just wanted to mention it and leave it vague enough to the imagination, because it's the way that I tried to approach the animated the Gendy series is that because it doesn't really work in Star Wars. It's way too fantastical. Mace Windu could not do this to 50 battle droids or whatever. So the way that I try to look at it is it's kind of like if the HoloNet had hyper stylized propaganda anime, and so if you consider that, and if you look at our what we do with docudramas, how it's 50% truth, 50% fudging, I just try to apply it to that. So the HoloNet, they saw Mace Windu doing this and knocking over all the battle droids, but then in reality, yes, he did fight super battle droids. It didn't quite happen just like that. We don't know how it actually happened, but something happened. The bones of it are there, and it can be referenced.
Was fleshing out the Neimoidian culture outside of the Trade Federation a priority?
It was a directive from my editorial team. So they said very specifically, we want to tackle that business, and they also said that we want you to try to give them a culture and give them a badass hero. And so from there, I immediately went to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because of the Ferengi in TNG are just kind of like a joke character, and then in DS9 their culture is really explored, and they have a main character, and he's got a family and all this stuff. So I wanted to bring my editor Alex Davis is also a huge DS9 fan, so we really efforted to try to bring that same sort of sensibility to the Neimoidians.
That makes me very happy as a huge Deep Space Nine fan as well.
It's the best show ever made.
It's my first Star Trek that I've watched almost completely through. So, where did the idea of Mills' unique connection to the Force come from, and how did you go about visualizing that in the book?
It was, so the first thing, the framework for it is Anakin needed a foil for his part of the journey. He needed someone who, I thought it was really important that Anakin had to have someone who could see all of him, because the idea is that he hides parts of himself from Padme, he hides parts of himself to Obi-Wan and Palpatine, so the three most important people in his life. I wanted someone who could just see through all of that, completely unintentional, but she could see all of that and almost act as an audience surrogate to get into the mind of Anakin Skywalker. So that was the framework for it. I knew I wanted someone like that. The inspiration for just the tone of the character is from the Miyazaki film, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, because she's an empath, she's a pacifist, and she's just a really great character. So I tried to kind of take that template and then build that outward to Mill.
I love that. Now, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Star Wars has been, I was born in the late 70s, so Star Wars has been with me my whole life in all of its forms. In college, we went to the special editions on opening night, that sort of thing. My wife and I, one of the first things we bonded over was our mutual love of Star Wars. We've passed it on to our daughter. It's just this universe that is so much better than our own real world. So it's escapism, but it's also hope, and it's something that you can immerse yourself in. And there's so many different flavors of it now that you can, whatever mood I'm in, I can enjoy a silly Clone Wars arc, or I can watch Rogue One, or I could just be with the Skywalkers again. And I can have my books too. I can go back to my Thrawn trilogy. So to just have that, it's just a comfort zone.
And how does it feel to be amongst so many fans for the first time?
It's insane. We were doing the signing yesterday at the Random House booth, and my editor said, we signed 110 books in 45 minutes, and I'm like, this is not what my original standalone sci-fi novels do not compare to this in terms of attention. It's just it's just on a different sphere. So and to feel that so many people actually like it, because that was the big fear that I I worried that I would wreck Obi-Wan and Anakin for so many people. Not just hearing that they like the story, but they like the new characters that I wrote too, and they want more of that. That's really, really gratifying.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. We'll talk to you soon. I'm sitting here with Adam Christopher. Now, Adam, I don't know how much you know about us, but we're known as pretty hard-hitting journalists in the world of Star Wars nerd stuff. So I'd like to start with something pretty difficult, so I hope you're ready.
Okay.
What's your favorite sandwich?
Cheese. A really good cheese sandwich. It's simple, but sometimes simple is good,
Are you going just plain cheese, or are you grilling it?
No. I'm just cheese. This is not grilled. This is just bread. This is cheese.
Okay, it's with bread though.
A really good cheese.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. That's pretty fancy. Now, in Shadow of the Sith, you're dealing with a time period that is largely unexplored. Does that give you leeway to shape the story your way, or are you always being conscious of how other stories can connect to yours?
Yeah, it's interesting because that period we haven't really explored between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So I was very aware that it was like unknown territory. But we also know from the sequel trilogy the kind of what hints at what had gone beforehand and how characters and people that we know from the original trilogy, how their kind of paths progressed going forward. But I was kind of lucky that they left me alone to just basically do what I wanted. All I had was, the line from Rise of Skywalker where Lando is, he says, me and Luke were chasing Ochi. And that was it. It's like, go away and write the book. So I'm like, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then I turned in quite a big book, actually. There was a lot of stuff to do because it was, as the characters I was using, and there's Ben Solo and all this kind of stuff, and Luke and Lando, and like where their characters go, and we see them in the sequel trilogy. It's kind of cool because from Shadow of the Sith, there's kind of branching points where like I'm not setting anything in stone specifically, but their journeys will continue. When we meet them, however many years later it is.
How did you approach writing those two beyond iconic characters in the middle of two places where we know them?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because, at this point in the timeline, Luke is probably the most powerful person in the galaxy, really. But he knows it as well, and he's aware of the power that he has because, as we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, where he's building his temple, but where he's like the peaceful teacher, and it's like, this is the Jedi way. But then at the end of The Mandalorian, when he rescues him from the ship and picks up Grogu, and it's like he just goes crazy against those robot things, whatever they're called. It's like, so he's a really interesting character at that point because he knows the power that he's got and what it could do if it goes wrong. He's not afraid of that power, but he has first-hand experience of
where you could get that.
Yeah, exactly. And then Lando is different again because we know him as the kind of the playboy, the gambler, that kind of, that famous character. But at some point, we know that his daughter is kidnapped by the First Order, which you can imagine is like a total turning point in his life. So that happens about 6 years before we see him in Shadow of the Sith. So he's been searching all this time, and obviously he hasn't found her. So you can imagine what that does to a person who's got the energy and the kind of life that Lando has. It's like, what does that do to a person? So to have that version of Lando and that version of Luke come together, it's really interesting because they're not best friends.
Yeah.
Like in the movies, they don't even. I don't even know if they exchange words. There's more of them in the comics and in some of the books. But it's that kind of odd couple thing, and especially because like Lando has got his problems and Luke has got his problems. Meanwhile, this new threat arrives that they have to deal with. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Now, did you have any fan pressure in having to bring Rey's parents, Dathan and Miramir?
Yeah, Dathan and Miramir.
Close enough to life.
Close enough. Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird because in Rise of Skywalker we see them for like 5 seconds, and like there's like 2 or 3 little tiny flashbacks. So I don't really know what people expected of them, because we learn about them in The Last Jedi through what Kylo Ren tells Rey, like what he can see, or what he knows about them and her own past, and then what we learn in The Rise of Skywalker. And it's like, well, Kylo Ren is telling the truth in both instances, but it's also what he sees in Rey's mind and what Rey believes. Now, when Rey is left on Jakku, it's like she's 6 years old and kind of has gone through this very traumatic experience, so her own perception and memories are not kind of, 100% documentary fact. So yeah, I mean, I had to make sure they were characters that carry a book, because this is their, as well as Luke and Lando, like Dathan and Miramir are the 2 main characters of the book, and although we know what happens to them, we saw in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, not too good.
Yeah, but it's like they don't know that, so they're doing their very best to save Rey. and escape from this kind of terrible thing which is coming. So it was kind of, fan expectation, I don't know. My own expectation is like, well, they have to be doing their best, and they don't know what, even if I know what's coming, they don't know what's coming. So I made sure that their journey was, a real character journey. There's the two real characters, and they do their best in spite of these like terrible odds against them.
Now, for our last question, we typically do one, but I thought because we're at Star Wars Celebration, I'd ask you something more Star Warsy. If you could have any Force power, what would it be? There are wrong answers.
There are wrong answers. I mean, moving things is useful, right? That would be really useful. But also, that's the most obvious power.
Yeah.
So, and the kind of the power of persuasion is also useful. But I feel that that's less dangerous than moving things.
Yeah.
Right? Because persuading people, it's the whole Luke thing with responsibility. To borrow from another property, with great power comes great responsibility. To tell people what to do or make them think things or see things, that's great, but I couldn't trust myself with that. So I'm going to stick with the moving things, I think.
All right. Well, thank you for chatting with us today.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Chris Cantwell. I'm a comic book writer of some comic books that you may have heard of.
You've been on the show before, so you knew our
Yes.
signature question was the sandwich one. So,
That's right.
Because we're at Celebration, I was like, well, we got to think of something better.
Okay.
So, what's your lightsaber color?
Ooh.
And what Force power would you have?
Boy. I always thought it'd be cool to have a white lightsaber. Does Rey have a white lightsaber at the end of? It's what?
Ahsoka.
It's
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. Is it white?
Yeah.
Okay. That's right. A white I think is super cool. I don't know. I think that would be kind of rad. I also think yellow is neat too. That's what Rey has at the end of Skywalker, right? Yeah. Okay. That's my color.
I was always an orange kid.
An orange kid?
They changed Plo Koon to have a blue one after.
I was very proud of my son when I took him to the lightsaber workshop thing at Disneyland, because all the other kids wanted it to be red, right? Where it's which is Disney. They were like, it's power. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. But my son was the only one who picked purple. He was very excited to do the Mace Windu blade, so I was happy.
What was that like? What was that like as a parent, bringing your kid to Star Wars Land?
It was really cool. That I would say that the lightsaber workshop was one of the coolest parts, just because the story of it was really beautiful, and the way they do it, and the way you build it, and all that stuff. It was really hands-on and cool, and that was awesome. We went on the Millennium Falcon ride, and my son was 6. And it was the first time he'd been to Disneyland, and everyone gets assigned a position, and we made him gunner. And so we thought it would be easy, just to shoot at stuff. But if you don't shoot stuff out of the way, it runs into the ship, and the ship shakes. And by the end, he was screaming and near tears because of the anxiety around it. He was like, "I'm trying, I don't know what to do." I was like, "It's cool, buddy. It's just Star Wars. Just relax." But that's him with most things. It's not an indictment of the ride. But no, it was cool. It was cool to walk around it too. I've only been there once. That was in 2019 for my birthday. So yeah.
Now, you're writing Obi-Wan, which is, he's kind of a big deal.
Yes, I've heard of him.
For you as a writer, how do you approach him differently than another Jedi? What do you think makes him special?
I think what's amazing about Obi-Wan is that he has this tremendous amount of fortitude in the face of all of the loss he's experienced, right? He came up kind of during the good years, right? The ketchup years of the Republic, where I was like, this is a pretty great place, and look at my best friend Qui-Gon, and then things go to hell pretty quickly on him, and they stay that way, and he loses, a lot of very close people to him. Whether it's Qui-Gon or Padme, and of course Anakin. Even you look at somebody like Commander Cody, who also tried to kill him. There are all these people that he loses in his life, and I think he's kind of a Jedi that has experienced a lot of trauma in his life, and yet has hardened into this kind of stoicism that is a rather beautiful thing, throughout. Whether it's Ewan or Alec playing him, or the voice actors in in the best episodes of Clone Wars or Rebels. It's like that characteristic of, it's almost this superpower of putting one foot in front of the other and carrying on, that I think is an amazing quality of that character.
With your series exploring different time periods of Obi-Wan's life, when you approached the book, was there any themes you wanted to carry through the entire series other than, his trauma?
I definitely wanted to bind them together thematically, because they all have their own contained, original stories. And it's kind of this, there's a frame story on it, right, where there's a sandstorm on Tatooine. And he's got this time holed up in his hut to look back. And, the TV series aside, it was going to be a chance for me and the artist to tell stories from his life, but through the lens of a few weeks before A New Hope, right? So he's got this hindsight that he's looking back on these moments of his life on, whether it be the Clone Wars or his time with Qui-Gon or his time with Anakin. And so, just like we all do, that kind of dramatic storytelling that we live with, where you take reality and you order it sequentially and have it provide meaning to you. Like, I think Obi-Wan is remembering these things that all have kind of recurring motifs and things that he's experienced in his life that come up again and again, whether it's when he's 8 years old or a young Padawan or a master or a hermit. He's experiencing these things at different levels of complexity and intensity in his life, and so all of that kind of binds him together. And a lot of the book is really him facing the question of what is a Jedi's purpose in war, right? And I think a lot of the book is about that, whereas a lot of the stories are set during war and he knows another one is on its way. And so it's that, and it's the balance of light and dark, and can light prevail, and all of those things, and him wondering, and him also being okay with not knowing the answer to some of these things, right? Because he's seasoned, he's older, he's wiser, he knows that he's not just trying to solve things and fix things. He's kind of sit with them and meditate on them and let them happen as they happen.
And on the panel you were just on, you mentioned Apocalypse Now, which is from Heart of Darkness, and we're not going into a Star Wars panel expecting either of those things.
Yes.
What about that story of looking into the darkness do you think appeals to Obi-Wan himself?
Well, I think what was interesting to me was, issue 3 of the book is set during this battle we created during the Clone Wars called the Battle of Abrion Bridge, and you meet a character in that story as you follow Obi-Wan, and 4 is kind of an answer to that issue. So with 3, I wanted to really put the wars in Star Wars, as I was saying on the panel, but then in 4 see the cost of that, right? And I think that's something that felt fresh to me in the Star Wars universe, to see the toll that this takes on people. Obviously, we see the toll it takes on people like Obi-Wan and Anakin, but what are people that might lose themselves to that kind of conflict after the fact, right? And so there's so much about Captain Willard from Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now, that to me is similar to Obi-Wan, in that they've been through some really intense things before their story starts, right? And whether that be A New Hope for Obi-Wan when we first met him, in the storyline, or in our issues, which are just before that, right? Or in this issue 4, which is this kind of Heart of Darkness issue, which is Obi-Wan has seen some intense things, right? And we know what's cool about Obi-Wan is we know he has yet to experience some even more intense things at that moment in his life, whether it be the loss of Anakin, the loss of Padme, being exiled, the loss of the Jedi Order. All of those things are coming, and he's already been through a ton of stuff. So that to me felt very similar to and evocative of a character like Captain Willard, which is he's already fought through the Vietnam War, and now they're like, hey, we need you to do this other thing, and it's infinitely worse. And it has to do all with everything that you've gone through and everything this other person has gone through, and what being Colonel Kurtz, right? Like, for me, like Anakin is the Colonel Kurtz to Obi-Wan's Captain Willard in a way. We have a different character in functioning in that way in the story, but the story is really about Obi-Wan and Anakin, and here are two guys who went through a crucible, and one came out one way and one came out the other way, right? And the line is maybe thinner than we think, even for somebody as virtuistic as Obi-Wan.
Also on your panel, they asked which Star Wars character you'd like to write. let you know that this weekend, with Ethan over here, I have been bullying him non-stop about playing the Jedi Outcast series.
Yes.
Because Kyle Katarn fucking rocks.
Kyle Katarn is awesome. I mean, like, I played the first Dark Forces game, and that was the first-person shooter Star Wars game, and I was so excited when it came out, and I loved it. I loved the story. I loved that he was, like, Han Solo, but not funny, and, like, kind of angry, and, like, more cynical, and it, I mean, you put him against... I know that story... It's been kind of retconned a little bit, right? Because Rogue One now tells the story of those plans, and like it used to be just Kyle. But like, I mean, even Kyle being in proximity to the story of getting those plans, there's another person who's like seen a lot, but has taken that and put it to productive use through the story of those games. I mean, I do think that the live action cutscenes of Kyle Katarn are maybe like have some to be desired. You know, but those games are great. I loved them so much. It was also a lot of fun in those games to repeatedly kill Lando. I don't know if you remember, you could do this. You could shoot the dynamite gun, and it would stick to Lando and smoke, and then he would run, and then it would detonate and blow him off the side of the platform. And then, of course, you would lose the mission, at which point Kyle Katarn would bow in shame onto a knee, and there'd be, like, the heavy Star Wars drum finish. But I do think it's a fun character that has, you know, some darkness in him that could be explored.
Would you be more interested in telling his story as like that kind of rebel type or a Jedi?
I would. My inclination is what made him the super grumpy guy with Mon Mothma at the beginning of Dark Forces. They'll probably, you know, look, they're going to explore some of that with like Andor and characters like that. Those characters, there's a lot of overlap with characters at a certain point, but like. There is something interesting to me about really leaning into the jagged lone wolf guy and knowing that he's going to be a hero. You know, I think it's a foregone conclusion, you know, in A New Hope that Han Solo is going to become kind of this amazing guy. And I'm not saying that the story telegraphs that in a bad way. I think you're rooting for this scoundrel to come on board to the heroic mission, and like, but I think what's interesting about Kyle is he's a mercenary, right? He's not a smuggler, he's not a scoundrel, he's a mercenary. Like, he doesn't really have that much of a sense of humor about him or any kind of swagger. He's just kind of pissed off, which I think is kind of a cool way to start a character in Star Wars. Yeah.
So, for our last question, you've already answered the other one. So, I know that you're a Star Trek fan.
Oh, I am, yes.
You can take one character from Star Wars and swap them with one character from Star Trek. One for one.
Yeah.
Just switch situations.
Oh.
You switch them.
Oh, you have to think about how it would make it work. Okay, because you have to find somebody that would work in the Star Trek universe for someone who would work in the Star Wars universe. I joked with my wife last night that I thought I would come out on the panel, and if there was a question about my favorite Star Wars character, that I would say Khan and see what the audience did. But I was too intimidated to do something that aggressive. Oh man, who would be like super cool to swap? It's weird though, right? Because it's like the genres don't even really like line up, right? You have one that's kind of very pure science fiction, one that is science fictional, like in terms of like the ephemera of it, but it's very much like space opera fantasy, and like mysticism. So I'm trying to think, you know, I mean, like, boy, I mean, okay. All right, well, I've got a good Star Wars one. These I'm just thinking off the cuff. So for Star Trek, what if you could bring the Traveler over to Star Wars? That would be interesting because he's able to move through time and space and bend things in ways that I think are almost at the level of how other things work in the Star Wars universe. So the Traveler could be cool. That just feels like a safe answer, though. Yeah. But I'm trying to think of someone from Star Wars that you could bring over to, like, Star Trek. Star Trek is also so, like, you can't do any of the, like, all the good guys are in, like, the ragtag rebels, and like the regimented military is bad and there's no direct correlation to Starfleet. So I feel like, boy, Star Wars character, bringing him over, oh man. I mean, you know what would be funny is if you brought over the what's their name, the alien species from the episode Darmok. The Tangarians or whatever, the something or others, the guys that speak in metaphor. So it's like, just bring those into the Star Wars universe to really confuse everybody.
You're very much a storyteller because you were like, what would work? I'm just like chaos. Like, what if we switch Quark and Grand Moff Tarkin?
That would be amazing. I mean, you could put Data into Star Wars, and I think it would be pretty awesome. I mean, yeah, you could just wrecking ball Star Trek and be like Darth Vader, you know what I mean, where he just destroys everyone, where it's like, okay, Emperor Palpatine, you know what I mean, where he just upends the Federation and plays them for fools. That could be awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Yes, of course. Thank
Always
you.
A pleasure talking with you.
Yes.
And we'll make sure people pick up your books wherever they're found.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm here with R2-D2. We have to ask him our infamous Gatecrashers question. R2, what's your favorite sandwich? I think we got our answer. I'm standing here with one of the biggest rock stars in audiobooks. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Marc Thompson, and I narrate a bunch of the Star Wars audiobooks.
Now, I don't know if you know us at all. We're called the Gatecrashers, and we're known as pretty hard-hitting journalists.
Okay.
So we always start off with a real ringer.
All right.
I hope you're ready for it.
I'll try.
What's your favorite sandwich?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with the Philly cheesesteak.
That's where I'm from. So thank you.
Oh, all right.
Now, with your audio drama work, how do you approach so many characters in one story?
So what I usually do is I'll read the whole book first, and anytime someone speaks, I jot down, the character's name, anything the author has put in there, and that's usually the primary influence, is all the things that the author has put in, describing that character, how other characters see that character, write all that stuff down. If there's any vocal clues, like if they describe it as gravelly or soft or melodic or, whatever, and then if they've appeared in any other media, video games, cartoons, other shows, other movies, I'll try to research that. But
when you're recording, do you record one part at a time and then it's edited together later, or are you sitting there in the booth just switching it up?
We're just switching it up. It's like straight through.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really. What is your vocal warm-up for that? Unless it's a secret.
No. I have like a giant water bottle and I'm just guzzling water. And oddly enough, sleep. Like the more sleep you get, it helps reset your voice. So,
which character has been the biggest challenge for you for crafting their voice?
Oh, I guess I will go with Marchion Rowe, just because I knew that he was going to be pivotal and around for a long time, and I wanted to do something that would make him distinct from kind of typical British Empire evil villain, and so a lot of the groundwork was laid for that with Charles, and just he described it, and he described him as there was a line I recently was going over my notes for him, and there's a line that says his voice was quiet, a breath, not a scream, and there was something about that anchored me, and I tried to kind of base it in that, and I found it eventually. So
that's interesting to hear the voice came from the book itself.
Yeah.
Now, you've been a rock star of the Star Wars audiobooks world for years. What about the Star Wars audiobooks makes them stand out from other audiobooks for you?
It's Kevin Thompson's direction and production. He puts all the music and sound effects, and he'll go deep into the Lucasfilm archives and get the most obscure things and knows the exact perfect moment to put them in. And I've gotten to do some other audiobooks that aren't Star Wars, and I'm always a little disappointed because they don't put the same. They don't have the budget. It's not their fault, but they just don't put the same production value into it. So they just feel a little naked. They feel a little empty. And I think that the stuff he does just enhances it so much, where it's like a movie in your mind,
Now, which era of Star Wars has been your favorite to play in?
Oh, man. It's like choosing your favorite baby. I don't know. I mean, anytime I get to do something in the original trilogy era is very special to me, just for the nostalgia factor. But I've really enjoyed doing Light of the Jedi or the New High Republic era, just because I'm a huge Jedi fan. So to see multiple Jedi kind of at the pinnacle of, at the peak of, who they were and what they represented has been so fun. And seeing them get toyed with and messed with and taken down a peg is
beaten up.
Yeah, it's like so heart-wrenching, but so, cathartic, I guess.
Now, this one's for me personally. How did you craft your Thrawn voice?
So for Thrawn, I got to do the 25th anniversary of Heir of the Empire, and my original take on him was I was going to play with maybe doing a slightly, to American listeners, foreign accent, to play with the idea of the Empire being xenophobic and him being, looked down upon because he's not from here type thing. And we got about a couple chapters in, and then Kevin, the director, was like, I understand why you chose this and I like it, but I think we want to lean more into the idea of him being almost like a Sherlock Holmes character, So for Heir to the Empire, we went back and re-recorded the first few chapters with that in mind, of almost like kind of the deep baritone, methodic, calculating voice. And then when we did the newer Thrawn books and Thrawn appeared in Rebels, I was trying to emulate what Lars Mikkelsen was doing and trying to get as close to that as I could.
And with recording and having to re-record things, how long does it typically take to do a book?
So for everybody it's different, but for me, I'm in there 10 to probably 6 for about 5 days. So it's pretty grueling. Like,
that's a lot.
Yeah, I don't want to, it's a cushy thing to do compared to other jobs in the world, but that's the most difficult thing that I have to do is the audiobooks.
Do you stop speaking when you're not in the booth?
I try. I kind of go home and just nod a lot.
So we usually have another ending question, but because we're at Celebration, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
If you had a lightsaber, what color would it be, and what is your favorite Force power?
If I had a lightsaber, it would be...
Here it is.
Blue. Oh, come on. There we go. Yeah. Would have been so dramatic if I had it right to go. Yeah. And then what was the second part of that question?
If you had a Force power, what would it be?
I mean, I guess the Force grab. It'd be so cool to get the remote control to just come to you. So you didn't have to get up and do that. So
everyone loves that one.
Yeah.
Now, this one is also for me. Would you mind saying perhaps?
Sure. Perhaps.
Shivers down my spine. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The Geek Questions.